let's talk about tres leches. Welcome back to Sprung On Food. I'm your host, Kae Sprung. This season, we're talking about favorite foods, the history behind it, and the role it plays in the world today. Joining me today is comedian, writer, and producer Britt Migs. Britt, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about my favorite cake.
Well, cake is a very passionate topic of mine as well. So I'm excited to hear all about it. You are a hilarious person, and your favorite cake specifically is tres leches. So I've got to know, what is your relationship with this food? Tell me all about it and why it's your favorite.
Totally. So it's actually crazy to me that it is, I think, my favorite dessert. Like, it's my favorite dessert, favorite cake. And I didn't have it until I was in college for the first time. Like, I had not ever been exposed to, I mean, I grew up very white. So I think, like, I don't know, I'm Italian, so I had a lot of tiramisu. I had experience with wet cakes, but not this one. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is so decadent. This is so like juicy. I loved that it sounds so weird, but love a cake that's wet.
Okay.
It's, I remember I was at like a tapas place in college and had that dessert. And I was like, I want to eat this every day for the rest of my life. And now whenever I see it on a menu, it is my go-to. And it's not on a lot of menus because I mean, it is, a Mexican specialty. So it's usually only if you're getting, Mexican food. You probably are, you've done kind of like a history deep dive on this. So you might have more to tell me about where it comes from and everything like that. But I wish that it was on more menus, and I wish people would make more milky cakes.
Okay, so today we start our petition for more milky cakes on
Yes.
menus across the world, across the globe.
Yeah.
This particular restaurant that you had it, do you remember kind of any dignifying quality about it? Were you familiar with the cake itself before trying it, or did you just kind of like try it and you were like, whoa, my world has been rocked?
Yeah, it was a group dinner. So it was me and some college friends, and someone was like, "Oh, we should order tres leches." And I was like, "What is that?" And I was confusing it with dulce de leche, which is like caramel. And I was like, "Oh, well, I'll probably like it. Like, if it's anything like that, I will like it." And it came, and I just remember it's, as I'm describing it, if I was describing this to an alien who had never heard of this, I feel like I don't know how appetizing it sounds to be like, it was in a pool of milk, but like it is so good because it's condensed milk, and so it's kind of got that like thicker, creamier texture. I don't know. Yeah. So I remember it came and I was like, this is so good. And it's I love sugar. We were talking before the call on how I take my coffee, which is like minimal coffee and mostly syrups and milks. And so I was like, this is the cake for me. This tastes so milky and decadent and sugary.
Ooh, and have you ever ventured to make it yourself?
I haven't. I am definitely a novice when it comes to cooking and baking. I like to do it when I do have the time, but I've never dared to make a tres leches. I feel like in my mind it's like a technically difficult cake to make, and so I've stayed away from it.
Oh, okay. Well, I would like to kind of instill that confidence in you and alleviate that fear and let you know. And maybe after listening to some of this too, you'll
Yeah.
feel empowered.
Yeah.
But I will say it's not complicated. It's a lot
Hey.
easier than you might think. I think part of the charm of a lot of foods and desserts
Mhm.
are in their essence, they are simple, but they are delicious. So it doesn't require a ton of steps or effort, but the execution is just like so chef's kiss that it makes
Right.
it think like, "Ooh, you must have been like slaving for hours in the kitchen." And it's like,
Right.
yeah, sure." And it's actually not too intricate. So
Okay.
I don't know, maybe after this.
Maybe after this I'll try it.
Yeah.
One time I made rainbow cookies, or tre colori, which,
Mhm.
if you're Italian or you live in New York, it's, the three colored cookies. And it was such a long process because it's three
Yes.
different colors and then 3 different jams and chocolate. And it was just so nuts that I guess in my mind, I'm like, yeah, 3 tres leches, 3 milk. Like it's got to be
Oh,
crazy. But it's like a soaked cake.
yes. I mean, so I'm a pastry chef by trade. So
Incredible. Yeah.
I've made rainbow cookies. I will tell you, delicious, pain in the ass.
Pain in the ass. Yeah.
And this in comparison will be like, no pun intended, like a cake walk. So
Awesome.
feel free, offline, you can ask me for tips and tricks. I've got your back. I want to see you succeed in this, and feel free to have this dessert whenever you want, especially because our restaurants have not gotten on board yet with it at every single restaurant. So this way you'll have all the skills you need to eat this whenever you want.
Yeah. Just we have tres leches at home, you know?
Yeah. Who needs to go out? Just come to my house.
Yeah.
To better understand and appreciate our food, we've got to know where it came from.
Totally.
You've probably seen it, a sponge cake totally saturated with milk. It's the kind of dessert that shows up at birthdays, baptism, quinceañeras, and every family celebration from Mexico to Miami. But where did it come from, and how did it become one of Latin America's most beloved desserts? Well, before we get into the history, let's start with the cake itself. Tres leches cake is made from a sponge or butter cake base that's intentionally left a bit dry because it's about to get absolutely drenched. After baking, the cake is pierced or poked full of holes and soaked in a mixture of 3 milks: evaporated milk, sweetened condensed milk, and whole milk heavy cream, or sometimes half and half. And then it's chilled, topped with whipped cream or meringue, and often finished with cinnamon or fruit. Now, what makes tres leches unique isn't just the ingredients, it's the technique. The cake acts like a dairy sham while holding the milk without disintegrating. That's part culinary science, part cultural wisdom passed through generations. But tres leches is a symbol of celebration, a product of global influences, colonization, trade, and even the power of marketing. The roots of tres leches can be traced, like many foods in the Americas, back to European colonial influence. Now, in the Middle Ages, European cuisine already featured soaked cakes and custard-based desserts. Think English trifle, a layered dessert with sponge cake, soaked in alcohol and topped with custard and cream, or Italian zuppa inglese, a similar concept. Even tiramisu, which came later, follows this soaked sponge structure. Say that 3 times. Britt, are you a fan of any of these other types of cakes? Or I know you said you like a wet, did you say wet cake, milky cake, juicy
I love
cake?
a wet cake. Well, that's the title of the episode. No, I love a wet
It might get a lot of clicks for that, yeah.
Yeah. I love tiramisu as an Italian. I mean, I know we have, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I know we have cannolis and some other desserts. I am not a huge cannoli fan, but I do love a tiramisu. The thing about that is I don't like it when it's too espresso soaked. I need it to be a little mild for me because I don't love bitter. But yeah, and then other soaked cakes, like I know like a sticky toffee pudding is it's a little bit denser and not as like milky, but I love that too. So yeah, I guess I'm a fan of wet cakes overall.
Hell yeah. Okay. You should have maybe a merch shop, a t-shirt shop that has some kind of novel line along those. Who knows? Sell a lot of t-shirts. There you go. It happened here. Maybe, you'll transfer 5% of all those sales to me because it happened here. Virtual handshake, done deal.
Yes. You gave me my platform.
Well, these desserts were designed to revive stale cakes and make them stretch further. And during colonization, these techniques and ideas traveled with European settlers, especially the Spanish, to the New World. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Spain's influence over Latin America had cemented certain European dessert techniques into regional cuisines. Sweetbreads, milk-based custards, and egg-rich cakes became common. But it wasn't until the 20th century that something like tres leches emerged as a distinct recipe. Now, before we get back to tres leches, let's talk about canned milk. They're not just pantry staples, they're culinary inventions that changed the way the world used dairy, especially in tropical and rural regions without refrigeration. Back in the 19th century, milk was notoriously hard to store. It spoiled quickly, and fresh dairy couldn't be reliably transported long distances. This was a big problem, especially for growing cities and for military provisions. So, inventors and chemists began experimenting with ways to preserve milk by removing its water content and sterilizing it. Let's start with evaporated milk, invented by Gail Borden, an American inventor in the 1850s. Borden created a vacuum pan that could remove water from milk without scorching it, and then canned it in sterilized containers. Evaporated milk was shelf-stable and could be reconstituted with water, making it ideal for households and the military. It's called evaporated milk because about 60% of the water is removed, concentrating the flavor and slightly caramelizing the sugars. But here's the key. It's not sweetened. It has a toasty, cooked milk flavor and is often used in savory dishes, baking, and even coffee. By the 1860s, it was a staple in U.S. Civil War rations and soon spread globally. Then we have sweetened condensed milk, invented around the same time, also by Gail Borden, though a French version was created earlier by Nicolas Appert in the 1820s. And you can hear more about Nicholas's other invention in the History of Pickles episode of Sprung On Food on YouTube or available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, sweetened condensed milk has sugar added before it's canned. The sugar isn't just for flavor, it acts as a natural preservative, preventing bacterial growth. Hooray! It's thick, syrupy, and rich. It's basically dairy caramel and often used in desserts, candies, and drinks. Think key lime pie, brigadeiros, Vietnamese iced coffee, and of course, dulce de leche. Britt, have you ever used these canned milks in anything in your daily life? Or if not, what do you think about these innovations?
I don't think I've ever used any of them. I'm trying to think of any baked good that has required it, and I can't think of one. But I do think that is so interesting that so many things that we use today are born out of necessity of like, okay, that was going to spoil, so we need to do this. Or like, icebox cake was something that was really popular in the 50s because fridges were, I don't know. Like, it's just so interesting that that's how it came about. I'm admitting how dumb I am, but I'm like, my brain scientifically does not understand like how you evaporate. Like, you just boil the milk until the water comes out of it.
Yeah, so the technique that they involved was a way to kind of almost like reduce the milk in a way that wouldn't like burn it,
Right.
but it would evaporate out most of that water.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Food scientists, man,
I know.
they're so
Incredible.
smart. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Also, another very weird, like, I'm not hobby, interest of mine, sub interest, is I love following those TikTok accounts where people eat like war rations, or not. Sometimes they don't eat them because they're really old and you could get botulism, but they do unboxing of like very old war rations, and some of these crackers are still intact, and like chocolate bars are still intact. Like, given you should not eat them, listen to this, do not eat it. But it's just like, it's so interesting how people preserved things back in the day and like made them last.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, you've unlocked something that's very okay. So these and I'm gonna have to find these, or I'll follow up with you after to get links or something. These are actual preserved items from this time period. How do they acquire these things?
Through, I think that they go to antique,
like estate sales or something. Like
estate sales, antique stores, however they find them, they will have. Yeah, it's truly nuts. A lot of them are also from like people who were prepping, so like fallout shelters, but most of them are war rations. So they're, World War II soldiers came home and, had whatever it was that was in their box, or it's just so interesting.
And these creators on TikTok are just like, get ready with me as I eat these like decades old crackers.
Yes. I think most of the time they don't. And they always have a disclaimer that's like, hey, if you eat this, you could get botulism. Like, do not do this. But
willing to risk it for the views.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, like they'll just unbox it to show you what it looks like and how intact it still is. And many of them, most of them are. I mean, some of them look really bad, but
Yeah.
it's just very interesting. And I'm like, yeah, they should have had a can of evaporated milk. I don't.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
should have. Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, great. My For You page is now going to be flooded with all this content, but it
Yes.
could be very interesting, and I pray that nobody gets sick. So,
No,
wow.
you'll go down a rabbit hole though, just because it's so weird to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'm very excited about discovering this after this. I'm not gonna lie.
Yep.
So now that we have our canned milks covered,
Yes.
who came up with tres leches? If you've ever been in a Latin American kitchen, you know that food ownership is personal. Everyone's abuela makes the original version, and tres leches is no exception. Today, Mexico often gets the most credit for popularizing tres leches, but Nicaragua also holds a strong claim as well. Many food historians cite Nicaraguan cookbooks and oral history as among the earliest references. Meanwhile, Cuba, Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, and Colombia all have regional versions of tres leches that vary in flavor and texture. And let's not forget the Dominican Republic, where tres leches is often topped with Italian meringue instead of whipped cream, giving it a slightly different finish. The point is, tres leches isn't owned by one country. It's a pan-Latin American dessert, a shared creation shaped by colonization, commerce, local adaptation, and nostalgia. But I realize that's not the most satisfying answer, so let's tap into some theories on the origin of tres leches cake. The first is that a Nicaraguan cook was inspired by English trifles. One theory is that tres leches cake first appeared in the British colonized part of Nicaragua during the late colonial era. According to this account, a Nicaraguan cook familiar with English trifles created a milk-soaked cake for the upper classes. At that time, canned milk was expensive and primarily accessible to the wealthy, suggesting that early versions of the cake were served in exclusive country clubs. But the widespread availability of canned milk during the Great Depression made the dessert more accessible to the general population. Next, we've got the theory that it was influenced by Nestle's marketing. These canned milks have become staples in areas where fresh dairy was hard to preserve, and they exploded in popularity during World War II due to their long shelf life and nutritional density. Nestle began expanding their canned milk operations across Latin America. Somewhere between the 1930s and 40s, Nestle's marketing strategy included printing recipes on the backs of cans, especially in Mexico, Nicaragua, and other countries where refrigeration wasn't widespread. One of those recipes? A milk-soaked cake. And then, some culinary historians suggest that Spanish nuns played a role in the development of tres leches cake. During the colonial period, these nuns were known for their baking skills and may have adapted European dessert techniques to local ingredients, leading to the creation of milk-soaked cakes in convents across Latin America. Britt, do any of these theories resonate with you more than the other? And if not, you're more than welcome to come up with your own theory.
Absolutely. First of all, I was immediately, not that I was saying this as an absolute, but I was immediately proven wrong. I don't know why I always thought it was from Mexico, but it seems like maybe it originated in Nicaragua. But also, like you said, it's kind of a pan-Latin dessert, so it's from many different places. We're enjoying that cake, but that is so interesting. I love the marketing angle because I know that that has happened for other dishes, a la, the green bean casserole that came from who makes it? Campbell?
Campbell's is very well known for it, I would say, because of their cream of mushroom soup.
Yes.
Yeah, or maybe even
The
is it
crispy.
French's that make the crunchy onions? Maybe even
Yes.
them?
I
Yeah.
remember it was one of them that is responsible for the green bean casserole at Thanksgiving. It just became a staple, and it was because they
Mm.
put the recipe on the side of their can. And that's how we got so many things that we have now. I remember it was in the Great Depression, they were making like a tomato soup based cake. It was from
Oh,
a can of Campbell's, I think, which sounds disgusting, but was apparently good, and we don't eat it anymore because we don't have to. I don't know. But yeah, they were really trying to make desserts with canned goods happen. And so I believe that it was probably did you say Carnation, right?
is Nestle.
Oh, Nestle. Well, they
Yeah.
both make evaporated and
Yes.
those kind of milks, but yes.
Yeah, and such an amazing point that you bring up about the power of the marketing on the labels and the
Yeah.
packaging. Also in another previous episode, the history of chocolate chip cookies. For anybody who hasn't listened to it yet, you can go back and listen to it, and plug your ears for 2 seconds. But that partnership, I'll say, with Nestle and
Mhm.
putting the recipe on the back of their chocolate and the later produced chips
Yep.
is what really helped give this recipe, this humble recipe that started just out of one in location,
Yeah.
just to the masses. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of incredible the power that that has. And
Yeah.
I guess that would travel a lot farther than just some nuns in a convent theoretically, but
Right. Just
you never know. Yeah.
word of mouth. But yeah, it's so interesting you bring up the Nestle chocolate chips. That is the recipe that my mom uses for chocolate chip cookies to this day. Like
Is that right?
always just whatever is on the back of the chocolate chips, that is the one that she uses. And I don't think she needs it anymore because of how often she
She's
makes,
memorized it.
but yeah, it's from Nestle. So it's like, I don't know, whoever came up with that, put the recipe on the box or on the can, genius. Because it's
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah. And now you see it. Every single item you have in your pantry, I think there will be a recipe on the back that's like, use, this soup to make whatever. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
smart.
Well, as Tres Leches spread, so did creativity. Every region and eventually every baker put their own spin on it. Some common variations include coconut, often made with coconut milk and garnished with toasted coconut, coffee infused to give it kind of a tiramisu like effect, chocolate using cocoa in the sponge and chocolate milk in the soak, fruit topped, strawberries, mango guava, or tropical jams, and rum soaked or even brandy infused versions. Britt, if you could create your own tres leches creation,
Yeah.
what would it be?
So I have opinions on this. I
Sure.
am such a purist. And I mean, I don't know what that means because who knows where it originated and what was the true form when it first came out. But I have had tres leches with fruit. I've tried a chocolate one, and I'm like, we don't need to mess with what is already perfect. I'm like, I like the cake. I like whatever frosting you choose to use, whether it's like, a nice sweet whipped cream or like you said, the oh my gosh, meringue or something like
Yeah.
that. Delicious. That's it. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't need anything special. I just want the original. I want the OG tres leches. Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it for a reason.
That's how
So,
I feel. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We made it perfect the first time.
ah, okay. So yes, tres leches purist, you are.
Yeah.
Well, in the US, tres leches gained popularity through the rise of Latinx bakeries as well as its frequent appearance in Mexican restaurants, but maybe not as many as you would like.
Yes.
Especially in places like Texas, California, and Florida. By the 2000s, it started appearing on restaurant dessert menus, often elevated, like the one that appeared on the menu at New York City's Empellón in 2011. More than just a dessert, tres leches is a cultural artifact. It's a cake that's sweet but never one-dimensional. It tells a story about food systems, trade routes, nostalgia, and family, and how even something as simple as a dessert can carry centuries of history between its layers. Britt, what do you think about the backstory of tres leches?
I think it's so interesting. I love knowing more about it. I it's so interesting also to hear that like, restaurants started to include it. I think that this could totally be on more menus as like a high-end dessert. I don't know if people are like scared that it won't be popular or something, but I'm like every single restaurant I go to, Italian or otherwise, always has a tiramisu. Why not a tres
Mm.
leches? I think
Huh.
I think it could be more of a crowd pleaser. Like I really believe in it. And I think it deserves the moment that, donuts or you remember that it was like every restaurant menu they would have their own take on a donut or like, little fried dough moment or something like that. I'm like we need to have a moment for the tres leches. But yeah, I think it's very interesting how it came to be. Of course, colonialism is always involved whether we want it to be or not. It's just something that happens. Terrible. But yeah, it's fascinating.
We should maybe just do some grassroots approach and, talk to some businesses, shake some hands, kiss some babies, and tell them,
Tell your
this is
friends.
this is a dessert that's wanted on the menus. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. There's a restaurant near me that I go to all the time. It's like my neighborhood restaurant. And I told them that for the winter and on cold days, I was like, you guys need a soup. You need to put a soup on the menu. You can just tell them. I don't know if the owner will listen to me, but I told him he needed a soup.
You can try.
You can.
It doesn't hurt. You're not telling them anything bad. Oh, you did a terrible job. I hate everything on your menu. It's like, oh, you know what? I frequent here all the time. I would love this and I would get it. And then, I don't know, see what happens.
The worst they can say is no.
Yes.
But you can tell your local restaurant that you want to see a tres leches on the menu.
Hell yes. Yeah. Okay. Only time will tell. Once this episode comes out, we'll see. We'll cross our fingers and our toes.
Yeah.
But I'm really hoping for you.
I love that.
Well, tres leches has made its way even into pop culture. In the Balkans, particularly Albania, the dessert known as trileche gained popularity after being featured in telenovelas. Albanian chefs, inspired by the shows, recreated the milk-soaked cake, leading to a widespread adoption. In the Great British Bake Off, Series 13, Episode 4, there was Mexican Week. While the episode was riddled with some controversy, contestants were challenged to create their interpretations of a tres leches cake as the showstopper. Have you ever seen this show or happened to have caught this particular episode?
Yes, I am a huge fan of Bake Off. I watch every single season. I love the show. I remember that episode, and often when they try to do these like regional episodes, it sometimes can come off as like cultural appropriation. Weird. Like, I think they have to make like a taco or something that episode.
I did not see the episode, but what I saw outside of writing this piece were clips circulating and people just being like, yikes. So I didn't see it in its entirety.
Yes, it was strange.
Well, in an interview with Glamour, actress and singer Bella Thorne has expressed her love for tres leches cake, attributing it to her Cuban heritage. Even Costco has gotten into it. Costco has periodically offered a caramel tres leches bar cake, which has garnered significant attention for customers. The dessert features layers of sponge cake soaked in a caramel-infused milk mixture, topped with caramel custard mousse and chocolate pieces. And on Instagram, you can find over 1.1 million tags with hundreds of thousands of other tres leches variations. Britt, can you think of any other pop cultural moments or any final words you have about your favorite food?
You know what's funny? I remember there was a viral tweet that was going around a little while ago that was like, tres leches en esta economía? Like that meme that's like, in this economy. So it was very funny that it's like three milks?
Yeah.
Like groceries are more expensive than ever. But that was just a very funny tweet. And I guess that counts as pop culture. But yeah, I think there was another one that was like tres leches. Why do we stop there? What about cinque? Like what cinco leches? Like why do we? I'm always, whenever I'm like trying to remember Spanish versus Italian because they're so similar. I took Italian in high school, and so I'm always like, yeah. But yeah, very funny tweets about tres leches. I don't know if they've ever had any other kind of like pop culture moment. This is it. What we're doing right now is the moment.
There you go. Yes. Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
This is the tres leches. Well, we can, maybe somewhere in the future, somebody will credit this one as one of those moments that there was a whole episode dedicated to this food.
Absolutely.
A girl can dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Britt, thank you so much for sharing your love of tres leches and helping me to tell its story.
This was awesome. And I learned something today. I learned a lot of things about where my favorite dessert came from.
Thanks for watching. You can find links and more info in the description below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. See you next time.